Hello and welcome to Jump To It for IrishRacing.com and Betting Expert. I'm Shane Anderson. A slightly different show today. We're going to be focusing very heavily on the two-day Derby Festival coming from Epsom, highlighting some of the key races that we need to bet on. There's also a few bits of news to touch on as well, particularly coming out of the United States with Bob Baffert, and also plenty of discussion in the UK regarding prize money levels. Ed Quigley's on the sidelines this week. It's just Stephen Harris and myself. Stephen, great to catch up with you once again. And there's certainly plenty happening in the world of racing. A lot of big talk, particularly around prize money levels in the UK at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, British racing really is in serious trouble, Shane. There's a lot of owners pulling out left, right and centre. The prize money's been decimated by COVID, which is understandable, but it's not exactly bouncing back in a massive hurry. There have been a few injections here and there, but most of the talk has been quite gloomy this week. We've got the Derby to look forward to, of course, brilliant racing. To take our mind off matters, but it's not the top races where the problem lies. It's the low grade Monday to Friday fodder where prize money's gone down to sort of $2,000 to the winner, and a lot of owners are pulling out. So quite worrying times.
The UK publication Racing Post published some articles this week highlighting some work that's been done by the BHA and other bodies in the UK, and that is around an idea called Project Enable, which is to examine the financial position of UK racing versus other jurisdictions. And there's quite alarming data that's come through, particularly data that goes back to 2018, Stephen. The fact that UK racing certainly is struggling from a prize money perspective compared to major jurisdictions. It's well behind the likes of Japan, the US, Australia, and even France when it comes to overall prize money offered. And also with significant angles around average prize money per race. It's ranking well behind those jurisdictions as well, and also Hong Kong, which of course has a very limited number of horse races compared to other jurisdictions. We're also seeing that Japan, Hong Kong, US, France and Australia all have funding models that are driven by the Tote, which gives them perhaps greater returns back into the sport, because that's the key. Only 0.6% of betting turnover in the UK is actually returned to racing at the moment. When you compare that to other jurisdictions such as Japan, which has got 16.6%, the US at 14.5%, France at 8.6%, Hong Kong at 4.4%, and even Australia at 3.9%, and also Ireland, in fact, at 1.5%. Their returns back into the sport from the betting dollar wagered on horse racing, with the betting amount wagered on horse racing, is far greater than what's happening in the UK. Certainly, time is now for things to be done, whether it be a complete rethink of the funding model.
Yeah, there's going to have to be. I mean, as my friend Icy on Twitter frequently says, Shane, it's time to rip up your model and throw it in the bin. And it actually is, because there's no other way other than racing is either going to lose huge numbers of owners or going to lose a great deal of tracks, or probably both, in truth. I mean, I saw figures that the income that owners get back in 2019, they invested £621 million collectively and received back in prize money 161 million. Well, that's a pretty big hit to take, and it's just completely unsustainable. And all that's happening in the UK now is that the ownership is being compressed into a smaller and smaller number of people. And even more worryingly than that, okay, we've got Coolmore and the Sheikhs and all the rest of it, but if the oil money dries up, which it is going to do, there's no doubt about that, there's no way in the world that in 10 or 20 years' time we're still going to have Godolphin and all these big Arab organisations dominating racing. Unless their younger sons are still interested, which is perhaps it'll happen. But so that's going to be another massive hit. So not only is it really bad in the short term, it's particularly worrying in the longer term. I mean, in the UK, it is slightly unfair to compare us with countries like France, who, of course, don't have on-course bookmakers. They only have the Paris Mutual. So the Paris Mutual wins its 24% of turnover, and that goes straight back into racing. Wonderful. We are where we are in the UK. No one's suggesting that we're going to get rid of bookmakers. It's part of the colour. A lot of people like a bet who will not bet into a Tote system. They don't know what price they're getting. It's not punter friendly. The margins are much higher. So we are where we are, but there's got to be some realignment. I mean, I'm not a sort of socialist type person, but you have got big companies like 365, Sky Bet, making millions of pounds virtually every day. Now, it's not all on the back of horse racing. A lot of it's on football and other in-play activities. But at some point in time, racing collectively is going to have to get its act together and, first of all, find out how much money in media rights the tracks are getting, because that's not in the public domain. And also, they're going to have to go directly to the big bookmakers. I'm not talking about your on-course bookmaker with his HOD who takes 200 quid a race. I'm talking about the big internet-based bookmakers who are taking millions and millions of pounds out of the sport from punters and simply not putting enough back. Now, that is the boil that has to be lanced. Now, how you do it is another question altogether. It's very difficult, but at the moment, it is definitely unsustainable. I mean, just one final point. My pal of mine used to own the best part of 15 horses, loves them, spread around a few trainers, loves a bet, loves going racing. I think he's down now to 3 or 4, simply because it's unsustainable. And he's been very successful, had a Cheltenham Festival winner and all the rest of it. But it is simply unsustainable to keep putting more and more money in when you've got no prospect of winning it back. I mean, with my tips during the week, Shane, I always like to say how much the races are worth to the winner. And more, it's sort of £2,322 seems to be the number they've landed on post-COVID. Well, you know, when you're paying, I don't know, 50 quid a day to have a horse trained, you've got to be winning one of these races every 4 weeks to break level. Well, they're simply not. I mean, a lot of horses are lucky to win once a year or even in their career. So it's unsustainable. We do need to start again. Who's going to do it? How it's going to happen? I don't know, but it will have to happen because there's definitely big trouble looming.
I think a couple of things to factor in on that is, as you touch on, the expense of racing a horse in some of these jurisdictions. In the UK, it can be anywhere from £20,000 up to £40,000 a year to race a horse in a particular stable, depending on the level of horse that you've got. And if you're running for an average of £10,000 in prize money, the returns there automatically would be making people scratch their head as to why do I want to invest in this game. And I think the other factor in that too, Stephen, is for most horses, and it doesn't matter which jurisdiction around the world you're looking at, the hardest race for a horse to win is often the maiden, because those lower levels of prize money is what's going to keep people in the game if you can get a boost to those numbers, because the reality is that's where the vast majority of horses are racing. I think feature race prize money levels are overall strong in most regions around the world, but it's that mid to low tier that certainly needs some well thought out strategy. And I think the other point that you touch on too is a lot of the funding mechanisms that are in place for horse racing at the moment. Some of the ways that these deals have been structured are very, very old. They're legacy deals. And we're living in a world now that is vastly different than when horse racing was first imagined. Are we doing enough to make sure that we're getting a clip of the ticket for the sport at every opportunity along the way in a way that perhaps could create more engagement opportunities for people wanting to participate in the game, whether as a bettor, as a punter, or certainly as an owner?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. The first thing you said, Shane, is absolutely right. We've seen this year, obviously, it's all slightly different. We've had COVID and everything's taken a whack. But Royal Ascot have whacked the prize money up. Well, to be honest with you, generally speaking, you'd get horses from around the world coming to Royal Ascot if they're racing for 300 quid. I mean, that is the truth of the matter. People love to have a Royal Ascot when it has prestige. Bunging another few million quid into Royal Ascot is completely wrong at this time when all of the bottom of the sport are completely being hollowed out and are struggling. The top end of the sport at the moment are paying 300 grand for horses to run for £2,000 on a pipe dream. It's complete nonsense anyway. If you're willing to spend £300,000 on an unraced yearling, you've got enough money not to worry about whether prize money's gone up by 30 grand for the Sandringham. I mean, so that is one thing that is completely off kilter with what racing actually needs. And to come back, your experience is probably a good one, Shane, because you know in Australian racing inside out. And I would guess that a lot of trainers and owners and punters, perhaps, definitely punters, in fact, the most important people of the lot, would be very anxious to have that Australian model in the UK. So what would you say that Australia does right that the UK is doing so wrong at the moment?
I think the fact that Australia looks at all opportunities across the wagering spectrum to try and get sufficient return. So in the UK, you've got the levy board structure. In Australia, it's run slightly different, where there are different price points attached to bookmakers and the funding that the industry will take back depending on a standard of race meeting. So, for example, a Melbourne Cup or a Cox Plate or a Caulfield Cup, the true Group 1 race meetings, the racing industries will take back a higher amount out of the betting turnover for those meetings compared to, say, a lower level one. So there's a lot of strategic thinking around how can the clip of the ticket be sufficient to keep the sport going. But I think the fact that they've got a blended approach to making sure that vision access is readily and easily available, so it doesn't matter what betting account that you want to go with, you can get access to vision. That's a big tick. It's freely available. Plus, it's a mixture of bookmaker as well as totalisator betting. It certainly seems to be working. But I think the other angle, Stephen, that places like Australia do really well is that they try and make it easy for people to get involved in the sport. So if you want to buy a racehorse, you don't need to have a huge amount of money behind you to come out and purchase it. Syndicates are really, really popular in Australia and have been for the best part of 30 years. So it's actually quite a low-level investment to be involved as an owner. But I think there just needs to be some more broader thinking, and you're not going to be able to turn things over that's been going for 300 odd years, which horse racing has in the UK. But I think they need to get some really smart people from all facets of the game with some fresh thinking and fresh faces to start determining what's the sport going to be like in 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, because there's only going to be more and more entertainment options that are going to be creeping into the space that's traditionally been done and owned by racing. Now's the time, and it's probably going to be some of the toughest thinking time that's ever existed in the sport's long history.
Definitely. I think in the UK, the main problem, touching on what you just said really, is that the levy board, which provides 35% of the total prize money pot, has done a good job during COVID. They found extra millions from the reserves to keep things on the road at the level they're at now, which is extremely low. But that levy model is just based on betting shops and is separate. Betting shops are finished, basically. That is something that's not going to exist. They're basically arcades. Their numbers are falling off a cliff. That's something that's not going to help racing in the longer term. And racing is sort of stuck in this betting shop. How many betting shops have you got? How much turnover? And it's an irrelevance. All the action is now online. And unfortunately, the media rights, which look like being the golden bullet that might save racing, that money now is just squirreled away secretly with the numbers unknown by track owners who are also basically running a monopoly, whether it's the Reuben brothers or the Jockey Club. That is a very lucrative figure. And what actually needed to happen was that racing needed to get this media rights money back into racing, not into Bet365's profits or Sky Bet's profit. It actually needed to be diverted into racing directly, without the secrecy, without the tracks funneling it elsewhere. So it's a proper mess, Shane, and it is going to come to a head. It's masked by big weekends like we're going to talk about now at Epsom and Royal Ascot coming up and Glorious Goodwood. The big meetings are still doing well. They'll get huge crowds when they're allowed to have crowds again. They're well attended. All the big owners want to be there and run their horses. That's not a problem. But at the lower end, Monday to Friday, racing is really struggling. And the only answer to it is, which drives me round the bend even more, hard to believe, is that the answer is more racing. Let's have more. Let's have Sunday evening racing. Now, Epsom on Saturday, we're going to talk about it. There are 9 meetings across the country, 9. All of them overlapping. A lot of them haven't got any crowd numbers anyway, so it's completely ridiculous. To the detriment of the whole sport. It's impossible to keep up with. It overshadows and clashes with all the big races at Epsom. I mean, the whole thing needs a shake-up from top to bottom.
All right, we'll talk more about that in the coming weeks, but we need to touch on what's going on in the United States, Stephen, and Bob Baffert. Well, he's in a bit of trouble, the trainer, of course, of Medina Spirit, who won Bob's 7th Kentucky Derby. He will be stripped of the race because the horse is now, with the second sample coming through, has been proven to have run with an illegal substance in his system when winning the Kentucky Derby. I suppose some of the talking points here is that Churchill Downs, which is the company that stages the Kentucky Derby, they've now banned Bob Baffert for 2 years, so we won't be able to have a runner in the race for the next 2 seasons. Yet you've got other organisations such as Monmouth Park, which stages the Grade 1 Haskell. They're still allowing Bob Baffert to have horses compete. There's no united voice on this, but all I know is the biggest race in the United States, one of the biggest races in the world, has now been tarnished by a horse with a positive result to a prohibited substance.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of 35th time unlucky for Bob Baffert, isn't he? He's got 34 previous suspicious cases have been raised against him. I mean, he's the unluckiest trainer in the world, isn't he, to keep getting caught with these mishaps that seem to keep happening specifically to him. I mean, it's not unique to him in America, it has to be said. and it doesn't do anything for racing at all. There's a lot of, as you know, Shane, there's a lot of organisations who are very anti-racing, and anything like this is opening the door and welcoming in trouble. It doesn't help the future of the sport at all, or the confidence that punters have to bet on them.
All right, let's have a look now at the upcoming races for the week. And an amazing week coming up, Stephen, with all eyes really being on Epsom for the two-day Derby Festival. We're going to have a look at some of the key races. Of course, day one being Friday, and we've got two Group 1 races on the card. And the first of those is the Coronation Cup over 1.5 miles, and only a small field, a select field, but a high-class field nonetheless. El Arsi is the favourite at 4-5 on with Bet365. Highland Chief an outsider. Japan for Ryan Moore and Aidan O'Brien, the second elect in the race, currently at 100-30. Mogul at 13-2, again for Aidan O'Brien. Pile Drivers considered a 9-1 chance for Martin Dwyer taking the ride there. Frankie Dettori riding Alba Flora at 12-1, and Alpinista is likely to come out. We're just getting news coming through, will not take its place. So that's the field for the Coronation Cup. Fantastic race with a great history, Stephen. I suppose this year, small field makes it a little bit trappy tactically wise. How do you see the race unfolding?
Yeah, I think that's a very fair comment, Shane. I'm just looking through the runners now, and I can't see an obvious front runner. Certainly not. I wouldn't have thought Al Arzi will make the running. He's been held up and cruised through from rear twice at Newbury. I've been really impressed by him. He's not come off the bridle twice. The ground, I suppose, might be a slight niggle. It's going to be fast or good to firm ground at Epsom, even though they've been watering, and there is a chance of showers through the day on Friday, I believe. But I'd imagine it'd be on the fast side of good. Al Arzi's not come off the bridle to win so far. I think if he handles Epsom, which has to be a slight doubt, I think he's probably a class above these. They interviewed Haggis after he won at Newbury, and he thinks he'll handle Epsom absolutely fine. He's a handy horse, a good mover, agile, and as I say, he's been really impressive. Japan, was a huge drifter, if you remember, at Chester. He's the second favourite. Moore's booked. They were very worried about the cut in the ground for him at Chester. He drifted and then was very strong in the market late as the right people unloaded. He was obviously A1 for that. It was a weak renewal of the race. I think he lacks the potential of Al Arzi. I suspect from a betting point of view, punters should probably wait, because Al Arzi is the sort of horse has still got a bit to prove at this level, and he might be the sort of horse that the algorithms and the robots that drive the markets late might oppose. They might think he's a very short price at odds on at the moment. If he got to sort of 5-4, 11-8, I think he'd be a proper bet. But at the moment, he's odds on, and that's probably rock bottom price.
Yeah, I think you touched on a really good point there, because the only thing that's in the back of my mind, I know that you mentioned William Haggis is saying that he thinks he'll handle Epsom, but perhaps the worst run of his career took place at Goodwood, which is a similar undulating track, although going the opposite direction, Goodwood being a right-handed course, whereas Epsom being left-handed. But to me, that was the only time he looked like he perhaps wasn't the fully made-up horse that he gives the impression that he could be. You know, he does look like he's going to be a star middle-distance horse for the next season or two. So at the price, I just can't have him. I'm swaying a little bit towards Japan, Stephen, because, look, I thought his performance when winning at Chester, although the margin wasn't great over Trushan, there was a fair bit of authority there. And if you're currently getting that 10-3, 130 quote, some prices have got him almost out to 7-2. I think he could be a really strong bet in this race. I mean, realistically, I think those two on pure ability probably stand out considerably over their rivals. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point about Goodwood. That was a poor run. I suspect Haggis would say it was probably one run too many. The end of the season, he wasn't right. And he's returned an improved model. And one of the things about UK racing, Shane, that doesn't get talked about enough is the different tracks. Newbury has got a long, flat straight. And Al Arzi has cruised round with a bit of cut in the ground. He's had plenty of time to pick off inferior rivals. At Epsom, it's hurly-burly. They're going 1,000,000 miles an hour. They're rolling around on the camber, and it's a completely different test. You need to be handy and kick at the right time at Epsom. It's a track for horrendous hard luck stories. So perhaps a very short price. If he's odds on at the moment, I think I'll be backing him at odds against. What you said about Japan, very interesting. He has run 15 times, so he does lack the upside perhaps of Al Arzi. But encouragingly, if you remember back to the Derby, a couple of years ago. Back in 2019, he was 20-1 that day. He finished third of 13. He was actually a very unlucky loser. He was buried miles back and ran on strongly. So that's his only run at Epsom. That's great that he handles the track, stays the trip well. I would imagine more will be very positive on him. They know he stays well. He's a big runner. I wonder if the prices will be a lot closer together by the off time, Shane.
All right, with Ed on the sidelines this week, I think we need to go head-to-head in some of these races. Give me your selection for the Coronation Cup.
Well, I have gone for Al-Azi, but I'll be waiting to back him myself. I think he might get to odds against tomorrow.
All right, Al-Azi from Stephen. I'm going with Japan. I think he's at the right price. I like him, his first up win, and I think he may have just had an off season last year. If we go back to his 3-year-old form of 2 seasons ago, I think he's a standout runner. So I'm happy to be with Japan, currently at 10-3 with Bet365. Stephen with Al-Azi, but suggesting we wait and hopefully the price drifts, currently at around 10-11 on with William Hill. Let's go to the second races that we'll focus on for Epsom on the Friday, and this is a Cazoo Derby Festival Handicap Stakes, a Class 2. Blue Cup, who was pretty disappointing last time out when a lot of people were tipping him, currently at around 7-2 market leader. Dream With Me at 11-2, Victory Chime, at 6-1, HMS President at 7-1, Strait of Hormuz at 9-1, next best, and it's 10-1 or greater for the rest of the field. How are you assessing this race, Stephen?
I think there's a horse with standout claims here, Shane. Unfortunately, he's the favourite, Blue Cup. I watched his run back at Epsom first time out when he was strongly fancied by the Manusere Yard, and he got an absolutely diabolical ride from Ryan Moore. He barely came off the bridle. He saw no daylight at all, and he made no effort to extricate him at any stage. Now, Epsom is a tricky track, but to be honest, he was the best horse in the race that day. He should have won. He went to York next time, a heavily backed favourite, and was really disappointing under Buick. The thing with York is it's one of those tracks horses can run unaccountably badly at for no apparent reason. Some horses don't like it at all. I don't know what the reason is. It's a track I've never seen so many horses finish tailed off at, and they can bounce back to form next time. He wasn't tailed off, but it was a very flat run. I think Manusier's got his horses going a lot better now. I like the fact that, A, the hood goes on for the first time, and also that Oisin Murphy it replaces Buick, a very good jockey booking. If you remember this horse, he won a Sandown Handicap last season by 5 lengths. The whole world was on. He looked a group performer in the making, really. I think he's better than a handicapper. He's had a look round Epsom. I think he'll be extremely hard to beat. I see on our caption he's only about 7-2. I was hoping for at least 5-1. It is a competitive race, but maybe when all the firms come out to play on Saturday, we'll get 5-1 about him.
Yeah, there's certainly been a bit of a market move for him over the last 24 hours as, the fields have now taken shape. I can't disagree with what you've said there. The only thing that's causing me a little bit of concern is the fact that the hood's going on for the first time here, which can bring about considerable improvement, but for a horse that tended to over-race last time out, I'm hoping it doesn't have that sort of negative effect and maybe gets him with his head up and over racing early on. But if you base him, his first up run, as you touched on, he had no luck at all when Ryan Moore was in the saddle. I'm forgiving him his last time out. I think Blue Cup's certainly the one to beat. So as we recap our selections for the Cazoo Handicap Stakes, the second of the races we're looking at for Friday, both of us are with Blue Cup. Currently it's 7-2 with Ladbrokes, but with a bit of luck we might see that price drift out a little bit further. The next Group 1 race to discuss is the big one of the Friday meeting, and that, of course, is the Oaks, the Cazoo Oaks this year. As we have a look through the field, Divinely for Shamie Heffernan and Aidan O'Brien, currently at around 11-1. Dubai Fountain, Franny Norton for Mark Johnson. Luck Jaconda, William Buick riding for Aidan O'Brien. Mystery Angel, Ben Curtis in the saddle. Ocean Road, Asheen Murphy in the ride there for Hugo Palmer. Saffron Beach is another one with a good chance, currently at around that 11-1 mark. Santa Barbara, the favourite, Ryan Moore for Aidan O'Brien, is currently at around 9-4. Save a Forest, Sherbet Lemon, Snowfall, Frankie Dettori riding for Aidan O'Brien. Technique, Sean Levy in the saddle. Tiona, who I know that you gave a big push for us last week, Stephen, currently at around 11-2. Willow, Wayne Lorden on an outsider for Aidan O'Brien, and Ziada, Jim Crowley for Roger Varian, certainly well in the market there, currently at 11-2. Fascinating renewal of the Oaks this year because Santa Barbara, the lightly raced only 2-start prospect going into the Derby, is the market leader. Yeah,
it's been a fascinating market in the last few days, Shane. Santa Barbara, I've got a five sort of negatives at a short price, thinking she might be 7-4, 13-8. It's now touching 11-4 on the exchanges. So there's a world of difference about being negative on a filly, unproven at the trip, etc., when you think she's going to take up sort of 35% of the market, and actually she's going to end up taking up just 25% of the market if she's 3-1 tomorrow morning, on Friday morning. I suspect she will be 3-1. She's the sort of horse bookmakers going to want to get. It looks like they've got a lot of runners against them. I've been very keen on Roger Varian's Tiona since the Musidora. I must admit that, trying to be a sort of contrarian and giving a horse another chance is fine at sort of 8 or 10-1. She has now shortened up. She's only 11-2, 6-1. So whether there's any juice left in that sort of price is debatable. But just to recap our thoughts on Tiona, she reared leaving the stalls and pulled hard for 3/4 of the Musidora in a slow run race where Snowfall was able to dictate on her own and stole the race, I thought, or certainly got a very good ride, whereas everything went wrong for Tiona. Some of Roger Varian's have been needing the run first time. She's second run back. He's absolutely confident she'll stay. If she settles, she should settle. They're going to go a proper gallop. There's a horse of Mark Johnson's who won at Chester, Dubai Fountain, who's likely to lead, and also Snowfall, who wants to lead. I'm going to be bang against Snowfall, win and place. Also, Snowfall has got stall 12, Shane, the car park draw. So Dettori's got to either make an immediate decision and go bang and try and get across to make the running, or he's going to have to not lead, which I think would be a big negative to her chance. So I'm going to be bang against Snowfall. I really like Tiona. I thought that Zayada is a very interesting runner from stall 1. Should get an early pitch, a thorough stayer, beaten first time out, but rather unlucky against a horse who got the run of the race at Chester and Dubai Fountain. I think that Zayada will reverse that form from Chester and should go really well. So for me, I'm hoping for a Varian 1-2.
With Tiona having the hood on for the first time, is that a concern for you, or is it the fact that she's still so vastly unexperienced going into the Oaks that it shouldn't be something too negative to consider?
You don't often see them pull hard in these classics. They're going to go a proper gallop on fast ground, and Epsom is a blinding track for getting cover because they all converge. She'll be dropped in. I'd be more worried about her getting a run through at the right time than the hood. Varian would have tried it at home. He's a genius. His horses are absolutely flying at the moment. Everything they back wins, and I know that before she ran that she's the best filly in their yard this year, and they were mortified. Everyone was on stable nap first time out in the Musidora, and they were mortified that she pulled so hard and threw her chance away. So a big run expected. It's just a case that all these thoughts have now been reflected a bit in the market, and something I thought might be 10-1 is now 6-1. And also Santa Barbara, who's got lots to prove on form, not least of all ability to handle the undulations of Epsom, who one could talk negatively about at 7-4, is now 11-4, and everyone wants to get her. So it's a race. I'm going to back Tiona and probably save on Varian's other one down the bottom. But fascinating race.
Also want to ask you about is Saffron Beach, because if we use Santa Barbara, the favourite, as the barometer for the Oaks, Saffron Beach finished in front of her in the 1,000 guinea. She's currently at around 11-1. Can you give her a conceivable winning chance?
I really like her, but I don't see her as a middle distance horse. She's run at 7 furlongs 3 times and a mile, all at Newmarket. She's never run away from Newmarket. She had a gallop at Epsom the other day on heavy ground, just walked around really just to get a feel for the track. I have big stamina doubts about her, to be honest. I like her as a horse, but I think she won't stay.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. Santa Barbara for mine, she looks so promising, but she just didn't look too straightforward to my eye in the 1,000 guineas. She wandered over the track over the last furlong or so, and she was brought undone. She still ran with a great deal of merit. But for mine, the forgotten horse in the race is Ocean Road. I thought her first up run this campaign, Stephen, when third in the Lingfield Oaks trial, was very good. She was slow to begin on that occasion, but she certainly was quite strong over the concluding stages. Have you got her in the mix at all?
Well, I can totally see it from an each-way angle, Shane, because a lot of these horses we're talking about, we think they'll stay. I mean, I think Tiona will stay. Roger Varian's confident she'll stay, but we don't know. She's never run over the trip before. She certainly didn't finish full of running at York, whereas Ocean Road is a thorough galloper, a stayer, tapped at the wrong time at Lingfield, finishing well. Whether that form's good enough, I doubt, but each way backing a stay, you might find, Shane, on the day, firms will be offering maybe 4 places, and I can certainly see that if you were getting sort of 7 or 8-1 a place about Ocean Road, there'd be worse bets, because I would imagine she'll definitely finish in the first 6 because she will definitely stay.
All right, let's have a look at our selections for the Cazoo Oaks, the highlight race of the 2-day Derby Festival on day 1. And Stephen's with Tiona. Stephen, one last push for the filly. You're getting 6-1 with Bet365.
Yeah, I think that's a fair price. I wouldn't be falling over myself to take that, Shane. I suspect on the exchanges she'll be at least that tomorrow. I mean, what happens in the market is fascinating with these Coolmore horses. Santa Barbara is 5-2. She could be 13-8 if the heavy mob play late, and then you'll find you'll get much bigger prices about all the others. But if they don't want to be on, if she's not stable nap and she's 3-1, 7-2, then the race takes on a completely different market. Absolutely fascinating.
All right, and from me, I'm with Ocean Road, and as Stephen touched on, I think as an each-way option, she is a fantastic bet, particularly if you are getting multiple places. She's currently at 40-1 each way with William Hill. I think she'll improve considerably on that first up run when third in the Lingfield Oaks trial. She had a good look around at Epsom last week. We saw that on last week's edition of Jump To It, and I just think at that price, she's worthy of an each-way gamble. But it's going to be a fascinating race, the Group 1 Cazoo Oaks, the highlight race of day 1 of the Epsom Festival. Let's switch our attention now to day 2 on Saturday, and we're going to have a look at 5 races on the card for this meeting. We start with the World Pool at the Tote Handicap. This is a Class 2 for 3-year-olds over 10 furlongs. King Frankel's the favourite, currently at 5-2 with William Hill. Patient Dream at 6-1 also with that firm. Chase the Dollar, you can get 10-1 for it with Paddy Power. Great Guardian at 10-1 with William Hill. Freak Out at 12-1 with Ladbrokes, and it's 14-1 or bigger for the rest of the field. Stephen, how are you assessing this race, the opening race day 2?
Well, I think we've got a favourite here, King Frankel, who's dying to be opposed. Mark Johnson's horses are not running particularly well, Shane. I think he's had 6 winners in the last 14 days, which sounds like a lot, but bearing in mind he's run 60-odd horses, plenty of them have been disappointing. King Frankel's win, well, that came in a race at Pontefract where he was able to lead against the far rails, and my regular follower on Twitter will know I'm obsessed about Pontefract. Get on the rail. It's about a 10-length advantage. Nothing from off the back can win. So that form's meaningless. Ran well at Newbury. Was beaten 4 lengths. I'm more worried about the stable form. 5-2 looks far too short. The one I prefer is Great Guardian of Roger Varian. Progressive. Flew round Wolverhampton last season. Really impressing in landing the odds. Hammered on his seasonal debut at Windsor. Just touched on an inept ride from Sylvester de Souza. Then went to Sandown, hammered again, but the ground was too soft. Pulled too hard in a small field, weakened up the hill. Returned to fast ground, loads more to come, stable flying. Should go really close. I think 7-1 or 13-2, a very fair price.
Well, let's have a look at our selections for race 1 on Derby Day. Stevens with Great Guardian, 10-1 currently with William Hill. I'm actually quite keen on King Zane each way, currently at 20-1. The top weight, William Buick riding for Mark Johnson. I think quick ground, a step up to 10 furlongs is ideal for him. And at the each way, King Zane looks a good bet in the opening event. Let's move on now to race number 2 on the card on Saturday. And this, of course, being the Princess Elizabeth Stakes at Group 3 level. Mamora is the equal favourite with Posted, both of them at 4-1 at the moment. Nazuna at 9-2 along with Statement at that quote. And Ili Kato currently at 6-1 with 8-1 or bigger for the remainder of the field. Stephen, what are you doing in the Princess Elizabeth?
A race for tiny stakes for me. I think this is really hard. It's 4-1 the field now. I think it looks at least 5 or 6-1 the field. They're a tightly matched group of fillies, never the easiest to predict at the best of times. I like Mamora. She's won 4 from 14 in her career. You have to forgive Goodwood, but that was her first run since August when she was so impressive at Sandown. Perhaps she just needed the run first time out. And I also thought Cosgrave set too slow a pace on her seasonal debut when she was quite well back. She just got tired a furlong out. She should be sharper. Hopefully stall 6 she'll be able to get across and bag the rail and make all the running. But I think it's a race for very small stakes, Shane. You can make a case for half a dozen of them.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's not a race I want to get too involved in, but Nazuna appeals to me, trained by Roger Varian. She showed a good deal of promise as a 2-year-old last campaign. She's into this fresh, and I just think she might be able to be bang on speed and finish on strongly in a race that 3-year-olds traditionally have a pretty good record in. All right, let's have a look at the selections from Stephen and myself. Mamora with Stephen, currently 4-1 with William Hill. I'm with Nazuna, currently 9-2, also with William Hill. Race number 3 on the card on Saturday is the Cazoo Diomed Stakes. again, a Group 3 level. Century Dream, the market leader, currently best priced 3-1 with Ladbrokes. Maximal at 4-1 for William Hill. Bell Rock at 5-1 for Paddy Power. Prince Easy at 11-2 with that same firm. Duke of Hazard at 7-1 with Coral, 8-1 or bigger for the remainder of the field. It's always an interesting race, the Diomed, Stephen, and we can see some horses often use this and bounce onto better things. What do you think of this year's renewal?
Yeah, again, wide open, Shane. I think it's at least 4-1 the field. I suspect the front of the market will drift. I've selected Century Dream. I watched back his run in the Lockinge at Newbury first time out when he was very hard to fancy and needed the run. I thought he shaped quite well there. The ground was probably soft enough after he'd pulled quite hard in rear behind the top-class Palace Pier. He should come on for that. He's run once at Epsom before in this race in 2018 when he won really well, and that was probably a better race than this. He's a 7-year-old now. There's no sign that his powers are on the wane. I think he's 7-2-ish. I would imagine he'll get to at least 4 or 5-1. He's the sort of horse that the algorithms will oppose. He's 7 years old. He was well beaten first time out, but I should think he'll go close. He's 9 from 29 in his career. He's been all round the world, and Simon and Ed Crisford's horses have tended to need a run. So hopefully he's been laid out for this race again.
All right, let's have a look at the selections from Stephen and myself for this. Stephen with Century Dream at 3-1. I'm keen on Maximal. You're currently getting around 4-1 with William Hill. Gets an ease-in trip after trying 10 furlongs at his first 2 runs of the campaign. Obviously being targeted potentially as a Derby prospect, but with an ease-back-in trip now to 8 furlongs or the extended 8 furlongs, I think he's got a really good each-way chance. So Maximal for my in the Diomed. We move on to race number 4 on the card, and this is the Dash. Often a really interesting contest for the handicap sprint over 5 furlongs. Stone of Destiny at 8-1 with Bet365, the market leader. Only Spoofing at 9-1. Copper Knight also at that quote. Sunday Sovereigns at 10-1. Ornate Next Best at 12-1. It's a raffle usually each and every year. Stephen, we often see horses come back year in, year out to compete in this contest. What are you doing in this year's renewal?
10-1 the field, Shane. Not many times you can say that. This is the fastest 5 furlong course in the world. I think they'll run the race in about 58 seconds, so don't blink. There's loads of old speedballs in this who want to lead. Ornate, Caspian Prince, Blue de Vega, Copper Knight. I mean, there's probably 4 or 5 others want to front run. I've gone for Carl Burke's Exalted Angel here. You have to forgive a bad run last time, but that came round. Throw that run away. Before that, tough, progressive. And while this sounds a strange thing to say about the quickest 5 furlong track in the world, this one's a proven stayer at 6 furlongs. I think they're going to go an absolutely mad gallop here. And in the last 20 or 30 yards, something will burst through that stays really well at this trip. And I think Exalted Angel, who's 16, probably going to be more than 20 on the exchanges, can spring a surprise. But this is the absolute pin stickers race of the weekend, Shane.
All right, as we have a look at the selections from Stephen and myself, I'm going with Recon Mission, a last start winner at Epsom over the course and distance. Ray Dawson sticks solid, claims £3, currently 12-1 with Bet365. I'm happy to roll the dice with Recon Mission, who ran in this race 2 seasons ago, was well beaten on that occasion, but I think he's come back a better horse this campaign as a 5-year-old. And Stevens with Exalted Angel, 16-1, currently with Ladbrokes, but a fantastic race, one of the best visuals you'll see in racing, the Dash at Epsom on Derby Day. We move on now to the big race itself. This is the 5th race on the card on Saturday. It is the Group 1 Cazoo Derby, and what a field we've got. Adiyar is in the race now with Adam Kirby taking the ride. We'll talk about that shortly. Bolshoi Ballet, the favourite, now into 11-10. Aidan O'Brien and Ryan Moore. Gear Up, Mark Johnson, Ben Curtis, a big price for a Group 1 winner last season. The unbeaten Hurricane Lane, Charlie Appleby and William Buick at 9-1. John Leaper, 7-1. Frankie Dettori, the new rider for Ed Dunlop. McSweeney, the last start Group 1 winner. Jim Bolger, Kevin Manning at 7-1. Mahafeth at 13-2. William Haggis and Jim Crowley. Mojo Star for Richard Hannon and David Egan at a massive price. Godolphin's One Ruler at 28-1. James Doyle in the saddle. Southern Lights for Joseph O'Brien at 20-1. Coming into this race third up. Roger Varian's Third Realm at 14-1. And Youth Spirit, an outsider, Andrew Balding, Tom Marquand at 40-1. Well, Stephen, let's go through the runners and give us a yes or no and a few thoughts on whether they can win the race. And we'll start with Adiyar. Adam Kirby, who of course has been jocked off John Leaper, has now picked up the ride on the Godolphin son of Frankel. Can you give him a chance at a big price, currently at 40-1?
I think you've definitely got to have him winning, Shane. I mean, this is a stall one. Is that there's a lot of nonsense talked about stall one. The actual truth about stall one is I think there's one winner in 1999's what come from it. It's an irrelevance. More salient for this year's Derby will be they'll be racing on a fresh strip up the inside that's railed off for Oaks Day. So the Derby rail could be the place to be. Adea is not the fastest, lacks a turn of foot, but I wouldn't be surprised if Adam Kirby, who's a very, very good judge of the form book, decides to make the running for the first time on this one. I'm amazed that Aidan O'Brien hasn't run a pacemaker to make sure they go a proper gallop for the favourite. But if Adea is ridden forwards on that fresh strip of ground, I mean, he's probably going to be 66, 70, 80 plus on the exchanges. Definitely have him winning. He's a relentless galloper. Epsom can be an absolute roller coaster ride in behind. If Kirby leads, which I think he will, it'd be pointless not to lead on Adea. He's a galloper who will definitely stay. He's not going to win the race with a turn of foot from off the back. So there's a possibility of a cheap lead going begging, and I would definitely have him winning. Because a lot of people have been saying, oh, the curse of stall one, the sort of contrarian in me thinks, well, I'm definitely going to back Adea, and I like Kirby, and I think he'll get a positive ride, and have him winning, definitely have him winning. Make all the running and spring a 50-1 surprise.
Pushing against the tide, I like it. What about Bolshoi Ballet, the market leader? He's pretty short now. Well, we'll just touch on the fact that High Definition, who was the long-time favourite for the Derby, was a race eve scratching as before acceptances came through, with Aidan O'Brien saying that they would prefer to wait for the Irish Derby towards the end of June. There's a lot of pressure now going on a Bolshoi Ballet, but based on his 2 runs this campaign, Stephen, he looks well and truly the deserved favourite.
Yeah, I think he's entitled to be favourite. Whether or not you want to back him at 11-10 is another matter. 3 wins, all at Leopardstown. Very impressive in the Derrinstown. The form got a boost from Max Swinney since. He's run away from Leopardstown twice and been beaten. He's never run over a mile 4. There's no doubt that he's a rock bottom price because of connections. He could well win, but not for me at the prices. And touching on what you said, Shane, what a disgraceful week it's been, really, for punters. A lot of the clock watchers latched onto High Definition, and I'm sure one or two have backed some of O'Brien's other runners. It's not acceptable to pull your horses out at the 11th hour without anyone having a clue it was likely to happen. This should have been flagged weeks ago that High Definition was probably going to go to the Irish Derby. Now, it's absolutely the owner's prerogative to run their horses wherever they want, but it is punters who fund this game ultimately. And this has been a very advert for Aidan O'Brien over the last week, in my opinion. It's not something that increases punters' confidence at all and does nothing for the sport. So I would quite like to see Bolshoi Ballet beaten because I think he's a very, very short price in quite a competitive race.
Yeah, in my view, I think acceptances and final fields for Group 1 races all around the world should be taken 4 days before a race. But we'll pick up that conversation at another time. But it certainly is the horse that everyone's now pushing hard for. He's well favourite, Bolshoi Ballet, but he certainly has been super impressive with his wins so far this season. Let's go to Gear Up. Mark Johnson trains. He was terrific winning a Group 1 last season. He had quite a busy season, Stephen, and kept standing up to the rigours of racing. We've only seen him one time so far. That was in the Dante. What did you make of his performance there?
He ran a bit better than the Bear Result in the Dante, Shane. He didn't start particularly well. Nothing got in the race. It was a muddling race. The winner made all. Back in the day, his win came on softer ground. It's going to be fast ground. Mark Johnson's gone very quiet. He looks a one, very hard to fancy.
Hurricane Lane's unbeaten, owned by Godolphin. He won the Dante, a traditional lead-up, yet he seems to be unwanted in the betting. You're getting the best part of 9-1 for him at the moment. I just think he's starting to become the forgotten horse.
Yeah, I mean, if you stop the Dante turning for home, Hurricane Lane was being niggled along, looked very laboured and hard work. I mean, they did go a right gallop. They didn't go right gallop, but he made very hard work of keeping up with a moderate pace, is what I mean to say. I think he'll definitely stay, whether he's got the class. I was very negative on the Dante form. I didn't particularly fancy High Definition, to be truthful, and I think Hurricane Lane is a similar sort of grinder. I can see him rolling around on the Canberra Epsom and not being quick enough to hold his place when they go for home. But you're right what you said, Shane. I mean, I've got the prices written down from the last week or so. I've got 9-2 written down, and I'm looking now at the exchange price, and he's a double figure price. So he's certainly gone for a ball of chalk in the market. whether he's getting to have him winning, as you said, he's unbeaten. Charlie Appleby's a very good trainer. He's certainly got to a tempting price if you fancy the Dante form.
We talked about John Leaper last week fairly extensively. There's a sense of timing mixed with a sense of romance for him going into the race now that Frankie Dettori is taking the ride for Ed Dunlop. I think he's a great chance.
Yeah, I've gone for him. I've napped him this week, and I really fancy John Leaper. I think sometimes in racing, I mean, you look at the bare facts and the figures. It was a listed race at Newmarket, but watched it back again today, and he did everything wrong. He was still pulling sort of 4 furlongs out away, and he down and quick and clear. Obviously, they were inferior horses. This is a huge jump up in class. He's got stall 12, which some people might think he's on the wing. He's a hard puller, but Dettori will fall out the stalls and tuck him in behind her. You're just going to hope for a bit of luck, really. I think he'll go very, very close if he sees any luck in running. He's a completely different form line to the others at the front of the market, but just visually, after he won last time, I thought this is something special, and I think you can get double figures. I think he's the one to side with at the prices.
Jim Bolger trains McSweeney going into the race, a 2-time Group 1 winner, both over 1,600 metres of futurity as a 2-year-old, and of course the Irish Guineas last time we saw him, narrowly but impressively. I suppose, Stephen, one perhaps doubt we've got about McSweeney. He's been to 10 furlongs once. He was well beaten by Bolshoi Ballet, but is it too soon to perhaps question whether or not he can stay?
I think he is a doubtful start. I really, really liked his win at the Curragh last time in the Irish 2000 Guineas. He got a very attacking ride. He was driven mad on that lead throughout, and he pulled out more. It was a very, very good performance. But 1 mile 4 is a big doubt. They're not going to lead, which I think suited him so well last time. I respect him, but I suspect he'll wilt out of things a couple of furlongs out. The one thing to say about when he tried a mile 2 on his first run behind Bolshoi Ballet, I think he was found with mucus in his in his throat, basically. So that was their excuse. They knew he'd bounce back and run well next time. He was given a brilliant ride by the boy. He's a really likeable horse. I'm hoping they'll drop back to a mile, and he's a horse to follow in all the Group 1 races this summer after the Derby.
I love colts like Mahafeth, who just every time you see him on a racetrack seems to get better and better. That was a demolition job when winning the Betfair Newmarket Stakes by 5 lengths last time out. He's currently second favourite through most firms. You can get best price 7-1 with Paddy Power for him. Where do you have him assessed?
Yeah, I think he's short enough on form, Shane. I mean, Haggis is a genius. I don't think there's any stamina doubts about him. He's finished full of running over the last twice. I just don't think they've been particularly strong races. And I think that John Leaper has got much more potential. I think he and John Leaper are the same horse on the figures of what they've beaten. A good listed Group 3 type standard. But I think because John Leaper is not the finished article, I think he might improve past Mohafeth. I respect Mohafeth. Haggis is extremely good at playing his horses. If he thinks he's good enough to win a Derby, then he's bound to run well. From a price point of view, I think he's short enough at 7-1 personally.
Mojo Star's a maiden, currently at around 150-1. Can you give him any sort of chance? He's only been beaten narrowly in both of his starts so far.
Well, the horse that he got finished second to, Manobo, is held in the highest regard by Charlie Appleby and won by about 10 lengths at Kempton on Wednesday. So that form is very solid. Again, could be anything, will need to improve, but I'll be making a book on the exchange on it personally, and he'll be one I'll have winning. I think he's 150, so he's liable to be sort of 300-1 plus on the exchanges tomorrow. Have him winning. There's nothing wrong with his form. Another 2 furlongs will suit him. Richard Hannon's always need a run, so he's entitled to improve from that. If you're going to get a real boil over, I'd have him and Adea as my 2 rags winning a few quid.
All right, we'll have a few quid each way on both of them, perhaps. Let's go to One Ruler, another Godolphin runner. Charlie Appleby trains. James Doyle takes the ride. What did you make of the performance behind Poetic Flair in the Guineas last start?
Yeah, he was quite laboured and under pressure a long way out. He had quite a lot of racing as a 2-year-old. I don't fancy him at all. I don't think he'll stay.
All right, we move on to Southern Lights. Only had the 3 starts to date. A Son of Sea the Stars, currently at around that 20-1 mark. Can you make a case for him?
Well, he's trained by a genius in Joseph O'Brien, whose horses are in a lot better form now than they were a few weeks ago. He's having winners again. If you watch that run back, Bolshoi Ballet, as we've said, was in the right place at the right time and quick and clear on the bend. At that point, Southern Lights got murdered up the inside. So it's probably a chuck-out run. He's got loads to find. the step up in trip should suit. I think he'll definitely stay. I certainly wouldn't have him a loser. He's going to be an unconsidered horse. He's just the sort of horse you can imagine the bookmakers roaring home at 33-1 to give them a right result. I wouldn't be surprised if he ran really well.
Third Realm's interesting. A winner on quick ground, a winner on soft ground. Can you make a case for him?
Yeah, he beat Adea in the Lingfield Derby trial. He was sent off 14-1 that day. Roger Varian does not have 14-1 winners, generally speaking. He's much more, when the market speaks, they get it correct. So I would imagine that Adea is ahead of Third Realm in the pecking order at home, despite, not at home, sorry, Adea is trained by, trained by Charlie Appleby, I beg your pardon. But I would amazed that if Third Realm is good enough, I suspect Adea will reverse that form.
And the last one to touch on is Youth Spirit, a son of Camelot, 40-1 for him. Is he an each-way chance?
No, I don't fancy him at all. I think that Chester Vase form is not worth a fiver.
All right, we've done detailed analysis there for the field for the Derby. Let's go to the selections. And Stephen, you're keen on John Leaper, as am I.
Yeah, that's an absolute double shame, isn't it? Both of us on. If that doesn't stop him, nothing will. But I think he's going to run well. I just hope he settles. He could be an unlucky horse because Dettori is going to go to the inside and try and bury him and will probably be sitting nearly last early on. We could do with a really strong pace, drop the bit, see daylight, fly down the outside and just pick up Adea right on the post, Shane, for the forecast.
All right, love it. I'm siding with you. As I said, John Leaper to me just appeals as a really good prospect going into the Derby. As I mentioned earlier, a bit of sense of timing, sense of romance, of course, named in honour of Ed Dunlop's father. To be ridden by one of the great jockeys for the stable over the years in Frankie Dettori, a late replacement ride, and just being a son of the great Snow Fairy, it'd be a pretty special moment if he could win the race. But I think at that price, he's certainly worthy of a gamble. All right, that's a look at some of the key races at Epsom over the 2 days. It's now time for the tips of the week. And Stephen, let's reflect on your performance last week. It wasn't a super week for you, but overall you've been absolutely flying. Of course, you're ahead by 33.5 units. Bielsa couldn't get the job done for us in the Betway Handicap on Saturday, nor could Moskill in the Achilles Stakes last weekend. What are you doing this weekend?
Well, actually, Shane, that was almost a rub down from you, most out of character. They both got beaten about half an inch, and Moskill. So it was particularly painful. Thank you for that reminder. And worst of all, Bielsa was on the wrong side of the track, and I thought he definitely won when they went over the line. He was immediately long odds on Betfair as well in the photograph, so that made matters worse. And Moskill got absolutely mugged by Horse Adelaide. So that was a very enjoyable recap. Thank you.
But you're only, Stephen, you're only as good as your last winner, and you've been in fantastic form over many weeks. So just being touched off, well, it's just bringing you back to the field a little bit.
Yeah, I know you're running on quite strongly from out the back, Shane. This weekend, I was very keen. I do think John Leaper's a really good bet. I've gone 3 points win on him in the Epsom Derby. I think he's going to be a double-figure price, hopefully, by tomorrow. So we're having a real go with him. Tiona in the Oaks, I've been very strong on for the last couple of weeks. She's got down to about 6-1. Hopefully she'll be bigger on the day. I think if she settles, she has to go really close. I quite like that race. And again, Al Arzi in the Coronation Cup on Friday. Wait, I think he'll drift. He'll be odds against by Friday. There's going to be money for Japan and Mogul as well against him. So I think if he gets to 5-4, he's nap material.
All right, let's just recap Stephen's selections there. And they're all in the Group 1 races, which I think is fantastic because that'll be where most of the eyeballs will be. Al Arzi to win, but wait for the price. Hopefully he drifts. Tiona, who Stephen's been very strong on for the Oaks for the past few weeks, currently at around that 6-1 quote. And John Leaper, you're getting around 9-1 with William Hill in the Derby. All right, let's reflect on my performance last week. And hallelujah, I was able to pay for dinner on Saturday night. I've bounced back in a big way. He's a shocker, let me down in the Derby in Queensland back in Australia. But God bless Kings Lynn and Sheen Murphy winning the Achilles Stakes. Narrowly, Stephen, great performance in the Achilles, I will just say. But of course, we were able to get 8-1 early in the process, so we were back in profit. And we've got a bit of courage and a bit of a conviction going into this week because I'm having one bet for the weekend, and it's all about the Derby. I think John Leaper is a fantastic each-way bet. currently at around that 9-1 mark with William Hill. I think just go 5 units each way, and John Leaper will give you a great sight in the Derby. So that's my selections for this week. Well, Stephen, it's going to be a fantastic week of racing, of course, with the Derby, the big highlight, but so many other top-class races through Epsom. It's really a special weekend.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Epsom's completely unique, Shane. I normally go to the Oaks meeting, so obviously the crowd numbers are restricted a bit this year. It's a brilliant track to go racing and a brilliant spectacle rolling around. The only thing is, it's a bit like Glorious Goodwin in a way. You're thoroughly enjoying it. You're having a glass of champagne, and then something gets murdered on the rail when it's coming through to win that you've had your brains on. It is that kind of track. You've got to play at bigger prices, generally speaking, and hope for luck in running.
I hope it's a great weekend for you. Good luck.
Thanks, Shane. Cheers.
There's Stephen Harris with his thoughts on Epsom. Let's have a look at what's happening in the United States, because Anthony Stabile's been able to post us a tip, because we've got a great meeting coming up with the Belmont Stakes, the third leg of the Triple Crown. And Known Agenda is Anthony's selection. He's very confident. You're currently getting around 7-1 by Paddy Power for the race. Now, I just need to, with Known Agenda, I should just say it's actually Saturday at 10:47 p.m. for the Belmont Stakes, UK time. But Anthony wants us to go 10 units to win Known Agenda. Clearly the horse he feels to beat. He's supremely confident. I was able to chat with him during the week, and at that price I think he's a great chance. He also suggests if you want to play exactors, Essential Quality, and also Rock Your World are others to consider, but very, very keen on Known Agenda. 7-1 with Paddy Power for the Belmont Stakes. Well, that wraps up today's edition of Jump To It, courtesy of irishracing.com and Betting Expert. Make sure you head to irishracing.com for all the latest news, form cards, opinions, betting odds and information for Irish and UK racing. And of course, Stephen Harris with his bettingexpert.com tips each and every day with his nap, which is his best bet, and of course his value runner. Overall, Stephen's been in fantastic form. Let's hope it continues into this weekend. If you are having a bet anywhere around the world, we wish you well. We'll see you next week here on Jump To It.